Today's guest is Kyle Dodd. He is Vice President for Digital Modernization Capture at ICF. And Kyle and I met recently at a networking event, got to interact a bit. And so I invited him on the podcast. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no, glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity and I'm looking forward to this.
So for those out there who have not had a chance to meet you at an event and get to know you a little bit, talk about yourself, talk about where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, so I'll start out with I am not an extrovert, so therefore the number of people that have not had the opportunity to meet me at an event is a very large group of people. Glad to be here, glad to kind of honestly put myself out of comfort zone a bit because I'm not a BD or an extrovert. I'm a capture guy. That means I do my best to sit behind the wall of BD and focus on singular opportunities. So glad to be here. In terms of about me, I mean, it really can go all the way back to I moved to the DC area back when I was 5 years old. Moved here because my dad was in the industry. He worked for Aerospace Corporation at the time, and they wanted him to relocate to DC from California. They've got a very large presence for anybody who's in the DC area, just outside of Route 28 near Dulles Airport. And he's been in and around that for quite some time. Because of that, I've always kind of been exposed to the industry. The industry is something I've been around for quite some time, but never envisioned myself in it. I had the opportunity to grow up in this area. I've been ingrained in the defense contracting industries since an early age. But I mean, I was focused on being a high schooler, trying to honestly follow my passion, which is not going after government contracts. It was meteorology. If you look at my most visited web pages, it's the GFS model. It's the temperature in Cane Valley, West Virginia, which is the coldest place in the East Coast, or at least in the Mid Atlantic. Most nights, it's other geeky things like that. So I went to school at Penn State for weather risk management. It's the management of commodities associated with meteorology. I went to Penn State because Penn State has one of the largest undergrad programs for meteorology in the United States. It was for me an obvious place to go because I knew that was a career path I wanted to follow. Started there in 2006. My major was sponsored by AIG, a company that was doing great in 2006 and sponsoring a lot of commodities type programs. So I saw this new program, how risk and how commodities were impacted by meteorology as a way to really get into the world of business and meteorology, merging two things that I was pretty passionate about into one single major. It was touted as the next big thing, next opportunity. That kind of came crashing down when I was in college. The financial crisis significantly impacted what was an emerging industry. So I very quickly in 2008 went from kind of seeing myself as being highly recruited out of college to being I don't know what I'm going to do. These internships that were free flowing became impossible and hard to get. And all of a sudden that industry I don't want to say avoiding because I was young. I didn't know what I was doing, but the industry I didn't see myself part of all of a sudden became a possible internship, something to do in the summer, something to advance myself forward. I was always lucky to have parents who were forcing me to try to always better myself, always position for the next thing. If you live in the DC area, you know what it's like to be in that type of world. So I had an opportunity in 2008 to intern with Northrop Grumman. So it did that it was actually Task, which was part of Northrop at the time. I had to drive down to Suffolk, Virginia from the Tysons area every single day to go work on Marine Corps vehicles and quite literally clip cables and put network wires together. Not the most glamorous internship that ever existed, but at the time I was lucky. I was able to be doing something that summer that was not doing what others were doing, which was kind of working in some type of service industry. It was good on a resume, but honestly didn't learn a whole lot. That said, I was able to connect with some people during that summer. I was able to connect with one individual who was in the corporate business development organization. And it was a brief connection, but it was an opportunity to re-engage. And so the next summer, I was able to get an opportunity via both family connections and some of the connections I made that previous summer working in the business development organization with one of the four-letter acronym Northrop Grumman sectors, which ebb and flow and continue to ebb and flow over time. It was Legacy TRW that was acquired by Northrop, and at the time connected with their senior vice president of capture. Capture was a meaningless term to me at the time, but I was extraordinarily lucky, but I didn't really realize it because the individual I connected with he was late in his career. He was an F-14 pilot, but he was highly passionate about the fact that at that point in time, every single person that did capture at Northrop Grumman had gray hair and was about to retire. That was a time where Northrop Grumman was smart and looking at their 120,000 person population and saying, we're about to hit a cliff of retirement. They had this curve where the average tenure was very high, but the average age was also very high. I think it was 40% or 50% of the employee population was within 10 years of retirement.
Wow.
So he had the forethought at the time to say, you know what if we try to develop capture managers from the ground up, instead of you were in the Navy and then you come out after 20 years and you work as a program manager and then you work as business development and then you do probably something else and then find your way into capture. What if we develop a capture manager from right out of college? So when I graduated from Penn State with my degree in weather risk management, which I very much enjoyed and which I very much tried until the last second to find a job pursuing that. I was lucky enough to go to Northrop. It was a interesting career. I mean, it's a huge company. It was before they divested some of the shipbuilding. So, I mean, we were literally over 120,000 people. But big companies have big pockets for investment and high tolerance for risk, or I don't want to say risk, high tolerance for having a young employee who doesn't cost a lot of money buried in the organization and really yielding no value for quite some time. And that was me. I got to learn, I got to train, I got to take every single course that was offered and really learn what it meant to pursue work with the federal government in a very low risk environment. I wasn't asked to do X, Y, and Z. I was asked to essentially learn over a 2-year period where I got to rotate through first competitive assessment, then price to win, then proposal, then capture. And during that period, I got to connect with some of the most senior leaders in Northrop, or in that part of Northrop, which was Northrop Grumman Information Systems, on those topics, and just learn and absorb from them. I was kind of a new shiny object because I was the younger guy who just raised their hand for literally anything. Like, you ask for something, I will do my best to figure it out. I was the guy who was good with computers because I was younger. I got to learn Excel in a very detailed way. But it was a fun time. I mean, literally everybody was there to help. Everybody was there to really kind of sponsor me and get to know me. During that period, I was also lucky to, in one meeting where I was my boss or somebody else pulled me in and said, like, basically, Kyle, come to this meeting. I have no idea what the meeting was about. I guarantee I had no value to the meeting. But connected with one of our senior directors or directors of corporate business development. And again, talked to them a little bit during the meeting. My boss introduced me, said I went to Penn State. After the meeting, he connects with me. We both went to Penn State. And he reaches out and says, would you like me to be your mentor? And I had, again, Northrop Grumman was great at that type of thing, identifying mentors for employees. I believe I had a mentor at the time who was in program management and was just walking me through the very aspects of PMBOK as a 21-year-old. But so I took this guy on with this offer, and that was Tom Bond Saint, who I haven't connected with in quite some time, but I hope he has the opportunity to hear this. But I mean, he really provided me a lot of opportunity. I didn't really realize it at the time, but I believe that he was the one who told me about a book that was Forget a Mentor, Find a Sponsor. And that was really somebody who not just mentors you and says, here's how you could do better, but kind of leads you and brings you into things and sponsors you, makes connections for you. During that time, I also just got connected with our vice president of international business development. I had the opportunity to, again, raise my hand and say, look, here's a vice president of the international BD for a $7 billion sector of a $30 billion company. He has no employees. He was promised employees when he came here, but then things changed. What if we make me his employee? As a very selfish thing too, of cool, that'd be international business development. I would get to go to some fun places. And they said yes. It was sure, why not? And so I had the opportunity to be, that was Jim Daniels, his only employee for some time, and go to Riyadh and to some very interesting work for a period of time. While I was his employee, though, I was obviously unaware of this, but there were some changes going on in Northrop. It's a big company, it's a political organization in a certain way. And so that position ended up being eliminated. And so I was never at risk again. I was a blip on the balance sheet. So moving me back in my previous role was an easy answer. But via my mentor, I had been connected with our vice president of business development for Northrop Grumman Technical Services, which was the lower end hand turning, wrench turning, and some technology services part of Northrop. And just so happened that on the day that my boss was told that that position was being eliminated, this other person that I'd met via my mentor and I were going to be connecting. Again, senior vice president of business development at Northrop Grumman, connecting with somebody who's 3 years out of college. Not something she had to do, but was something that she decided to do and then did because she was connected with my mentor. My mentor suggested we connect. So I started off the discussion with as you know, my current boss is that position's gone. I'm obviously interested in opportunities to progress past my rotational program and just dabbling in international BD, and see what the world has for me, and where can I actually add value to this company at the end of the day. And she said, you know, why don't we take a chance? Believe how she put it was, if this works, that's great for us, great for you, and great for the organization. If it doesn't work, that's not your fault. Meaning Northrop Grumman's never tried to say 24-year-old go do capture. And so they did. During that time, I also took a risk. I told her, yes, I would accept that, but I'd only accept that if I got to move to New Hampshire and work remotely, which wasn't quite as much of a thing in 2014. But that's where my girlfriend and now wife, so it was a good decision, had relocated to for school. So I said I would travel, I would do whatever is needed, as long as I could do that. And they said yes, which at the time it's a bold question of me, but I'm glad I asked. Otherwise, my life would be drastically different right now. So had the opportunity in Northrop again, really expand, really in a low risk environment, go through a lot of trial and error. I'm sure if I was looking at myself back then, it would be embarrassing to watch myself function. But it was good people who recognized that I could provide value as long as they also provide value to me. They mentored me, although they were not my formal mentors. They really took me under their wing. And I was allowed to grow and learn in that organization for quite some time. And it was a great role. I had senior leaders when I would talk with them say, hey, Kyle, first off, how did you end up here? Because I'm used to capture managers not looking like you, not talking like you, having been in that industry for a very long time. And again, that was a different employee population back then. Sure. It's not that long ago, but it really was, especially at Northrop. And it was a great company. The problem was we were not the core product from Northrop. Northrop is a is the B2, the B23, B21. They were going after Casey, the next generation tanker. I mean, that's where Northrop Grumman makes their money, along with other platforms. When they say platform, they mean a hardware platform.
Right.
So we were not where they're investing. It really was a bureaucratic organization. There were some negatives along with the positives. So I took an opportunity to go to Whitney Bradley and Brown, WBB, in 2018. There, I was one of only a few capture managers. It was a 500-person company. And again, I took that job. I took an interview for that job because our house had flooded, and we were staying at a hotel, and I could see the logo for the company outside of our hotel room. And that quite literally is the only reason I took the interview. It was one of those like LinkedIn messages. I normally don't respond to them. I did, and it was close to my house. Said yes. And again, I got lucky. I found a great person that I was able to work for there who really took me under the wing, because the type of work I was going after there was drastically different. It was all advisory and acquisition services for the DoD. But I enjoyed my time. It was a great place. It was they really valued what I brought from a large business to a small organization. We were private equity owned, but again, we were really only 500 people, and we were low touch from the PE. That company, we grew over the time I was there. We were eventually divested. I found out we were being divested by looking at my CFO's unprotected calendar and seeing that he had a meeting with the M&A director from the acquiring company, and realizing that company that I was acquiring, WBP, was probably the place I was going to go at that point in my career, at least. And realizing I wanted to try something different. At the same time, it just happened that ICF reached out. It was Jake Bukema, who's former ITG, as part of the acquisition with ICF. It seemed like the right time to be open to opportunities. Interviewed here, interviewed a few other places. Took the role at ICF as a director of capture. And again, luckily that I didn't really realize it, but the mix of experience I had from a large and also a small worked really well with this organization. And I think does work really well for anybody who gets to experience the diversity in their career. The diversity of larges and smalls, and not just being in one bucket, over and really trialing different aspects of capture and testing himself. I was promoted here a few times, now get to run an organization that includes 3, soon to be 5 directors and senior directors of capture, along with 1 capture analyst. But again, ICF has presented its own array of challenges. I mean, it's a company that has a consulting background. Consulting contracts are relatively small. So the capture competency here, that is something that's really grown over the last few years. And I've had the opportunity to really work with a great team of people to put together a true Shipley-based capture process. So I have the lessons learned from Northrop Grumman, which is, okay, I felt like that was a little bit too bureaucratic. I had the lessons learned from WBB and early ICF, which were, okay, I want a little bit more in terms of oversight and management involvement. And we've been able to craft something that I think is going to be quite successful.
Wow, I think you've done something that I always recommend people do. And I've been fortunate in my career as well to work for both large companies and small companies. I think the only thing you're missing on your resume is working for the government at some point.
I know.
Which would also enlighten you in a whole new way, right?
It really would, actually, which I did. It's just how do you do that at this point? Maybe someday.
Yeah, you never know. It could be your retirement job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. And so are you still in New Hampshire? You still work remote for ICF?
No, I should have included that. So Northrop Grumman was kind enough to say that for a certain, again, companies go through evolutions. They went through an evolution that was when I was working remotely. I worked with a team of people that were scattered across the U.S. I traveled every week somewhere. Somebody takes over, decisions are made. The new decision is any promotion, it has to be tied to a moving back to DC. So I had a promotion that was tied to moving back to DC. Of course, we moved back to DC, and I have to travel to Orlando every single week for umpteen weeks in a row. And my wife waves the white flag and says, "What's going on here? Like, you were traveling to DC when we lived in New Hampshire. We moved to DC, and you're traveling somewhere else." And I again, that's the I learned over a period of time, and I got to a different phase of my life where I realized I don't want to be on the road every single week. And that's where I was really honest when I actually took that job with WBB. We found out my wife was pregnant right after, and sorry, background noise. Right when I got the job offer, but I was very honest with the individual who's recruiting me, and I said, like, "Hey, look, this is what's happening. I don't know if I want to take this job because I know where I am now. I know what I'm doing, and I don't know if I want to take that risk." So it was, but I did, and then again, being open, being honest, being candid worked out really well.
Yeah, I think those are key things that everybody should remember when they're interviewing or when they're talking about a possible job opportunity. The most transparent you can be, the better you're going to be, right? They should be
Yeah,
transparent with you. You should be transparent with them. You're trying to find a way for you both to win from this. Really, it's with any job. You're both trying to find a way to win, right? The company wants to make money. They want you to help them do it. You want to make money and be successful, and they want to help you do it. And so having those conversations are critically important in setting kind of those baseline expectations, even if they do switch later, like having to move to DC or whatever.
yeah, and it was, I mean, it was Dick Justice was my boss there, and he was a great guy. And it was funny. I actually declined the job when I went to WB at first, because of that, just what was happening in life. Um, and his response when we talked was like, honestly, Kyle, that part confuses me. Like, if you had told me you're not accepting this for another reason, I get it. But that part confuses me because it's a very family friendly organization. So like the fact I brought it up um, ended with a really good conversation, and that conversation convinced me to take the job. So again, just the being honest part of it opened up a new side of the conversation that probably would never have existed.
So Kyle, based on your experience, looking back at the varied experience you've had and the different companies, what's something you look back and go, man, I wish we did that differently? And I'm going to caveat that to say, you don't have to have the solution that would make it a perfect situation, but it's just something you've looked at and gone, man, it could be better for those people who are coming behind me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that I would have priced a very large bid that I had at WBB that we lost by 0.4%, by 0.5% less,
Uh,
because that'd be too obvious. But what I think we all could do differently is just and you hit on the kind of, I have not worked with the government. I've not worked for the government. I've worked with the government. But the interaction between government industry is, as part of the procurement process,
hmm.
um, is something that I think we're drastically lacking. I have the opportunity to engage with everybody industry on a regular basis, and I have the opportunity to engage with people in the government on a regular basis when it is not about something specific. But as soon as, honestly, my team gets involved when it's about a specific opportunity, there's not that transparency that I really value. And I think that would be extremely beneficial to both parties. Like, a lot of times we're bidding things and we're shooting in the dark. We honestly are, and everybody is. It's a we'll bid this. We all know that things are going to change.
I don't like that. No, I don't like
And
that.
no,
I don't like
I don't like it. You
I
like it.
think LPTA, at least in the IT services industry, has got to be gone. Anybody who still uses that, you're missing the
Completely.
boat.
And it's not just from a price point, it's also from a solution aspect.
Mm.
Always a lot of unknowns. We have to be candid about what are the knowns and what are the unknowns. Sometimes the government is procuring things, rightly so, where they're asking industry to provide a solution, but that solution isn't something that we can provide based on a piece of paper. It's a solution that we have to get to collaboratively. Um, so the format for collaborative discussion as part of the bidding process is part of the solutioning process should not be something that industry does based on pieces of paper, based on limited interaction. And a lot of times that is what occurs. Um, and it's based on the best intelligence we can possibly put together, talking with others in industry, talking with individuals within the government. Um, but at the end of the day, there's always more that we'd love to know.
Mhm.
Um, and so trying to find a way that we can do that and be more transparent with each other, be more transparent about what we're trying to do, be more transparent about what is in the art of the possible, meaning what exists, what are the things we've tried before and haven't worked. I mean, because I could put a bid together and just not know that X hadn't worked for you previously, and then you read X in my proposal, and my proposal gets thrown
Right.
out. So how can we make the entire process more efficient and also much more effective?
Mm.
And I think that's from a, I know that's from a technical standpoint and a cost standpoint. Um, and more consistent, honestly, across industries, so that we're not spending the resources. Um, and that when I say we, that is both industry and government. Like government spends a enormous amount of resources acquiring services, acquiring products, um, and industry spends an enormous amount of resources bidding on those and procuring those. And that burn is very significant if you look across industry. And I would just love to see it be more effective.
Those are great thoughts, and I don't have
I
I don't
know.
have a solution for it at all, of course,
You told
being
me
in
there'd be
government.
solutions for it. So
No, but I agree. I mean, I think I know depending on the organization I've worked at, I've been lucky enough to be places where we've been very forthright and very communicative up until the day we put it on the street, right? And then for
yeah,
some reason, maybe it's a FAR regulation, the contracting officer tells me at that point, you can't talk about it anymore. And I do agree with you, then we've lost value. We've lost what you just talked about, right? That art of the negotiation, that art of conversing. If it didn't happen before that point, it's too late. I've seen many procurements not go to fruition because of that.
yeah,
All the solutions that were presented were not great ones. And so they didn't get selected so yeah, I think there's work to be done there. I'm not exactly sure that's something GSA will have to figure out, right? But
yeah,
it's work that should be done. I would agree with you.
yeah. And I mean, for me, that's a how we collectively could do things. And I think in terms of everybody, also just I mean, the mentoring piece of it is something that we should all value more in our career because it's something that uh, I would say is absolutely essential to help people like me who didn't really know what they. I mean, every single person that comes out of college, unless you are a highly driven and know that I want to be X at age 21, um, your career is always going to snake. And a lot of times you talk to HR, and HR shows you a pyramid or a career progression that's very linear, and that might work for certain roles, but for a lot of roles that's just not reality. So it's the flexibility that a mentor can provide and tell you, here's how my career evolved, um, and make connections for you, help you get to understand yourself, and open doors over that kind of very transformative period of your career, which is the first 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I like how you phrased it earlier on, which was a career sponsor rather than a mentor, because I think that you're right, makes a huge difference in terms of the purpose of the relationship, right? I can mentor
Yeah,
people. I could even mentor more than one person at a time, right? It's a symbiosis relationship. We're sharing information. I'm teaching them, how to work, how to participate in the business world, right? Not just at their company, but across the industry. But that idea of sponsorship means there's some level of shared responsibility, right? In helping the person to craft their career. And I really like that. And I'll have to think more about that. I'm not exactly sure how that works in government because government's so weird, but certainly in industry, when I worked in industry, I could see that being a very valuable tool to uh, get, people who are driven to, help them use that drive and be very successful.
yeah. I mean, it's also helping people because sometimes the career that I mean, a lot of times the career path that you took is the career path. It's like, oh, this is the most logical career path to take, and what I do is the best. But understand that thing X, which might not even be at your current company, um, might be the most optimal career path them, or encourage them just to take risks that you might not feel like is a smart risk at a certain point in one's career.
Right. So Kyle, what's coming up for you here in the near future?
I've got no idea. No, but uh, in terms of what's coming up in the future, I mean, I've got I'm at a good place in my career, I would say, but it's always a question of what comes next career wise, and it's really taking any opportunity that's open to you. I mean, I like where we are at ICF and the opportunity to build there. I would say what comes next career wise for me is executing what we put together here at ICF, which is um, really punching above our weight class. I'm looking forward to taking away work from Paragon, Accenture, Deloitte. For me personally, that's what hopefully comes next in the next year. In terms of life, I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. So what comes next is always more kid time. And honestly, that's what's most important to me. I get the opportunity to spend time with them. I get the opportunity to be more present, and that's a huge aspect for me in my career is knowing that. And I tell people that as well when I interview them. I actually sell that as like a my organization is made up of a lot of people that are at that stage or were previously at that stage and understand that stage of life, and working within that stage and encouraging people to be very active parents, and be again open, transparent, and honest about bandwidth constraints there. And that's a when you have the ability to be as flexible as you can, but then once that bid comes out, lock down and pursue it. But if needed, we'll back you up. So I would say for me, what comes next in life is just more focusing on the kids, and a lot of family time. And honestly, I'm trying to do more of this type of stuff. And I said at the beginning, I'm an extrovert. Or sorry, I'm an introvert, very much so an introvert. I'm trying to make myself get out there a little bit more. I'm not the person you'll find at every single FCA and ACT-IAC and conference XYZ. But trying to do more of that, and trying to get out there more to better understand the industry, better understand my competitors, better engage with government, especially. Yeah, I mean, careers are always evolving, and I look forward to what the future holds.
Well, Kyle, I really appreciate you sharing with me your journey and how it's kind of, winded its way to where you are today. And I appreciate that thought you have on, keeping your life balanced. Work is important, but family is super important, and keeping them in balance is so critical to all of us. So thank you with that thought. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate this opportunity, and yeah, look forward to more opportunities like this down the road.